Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, sorting out quarterback questions again in November. Also, the Red Raiders opening up their second year under head coach Mark Adams on the hardwood with a big win over Northwestern State. We'll break down what went down at United Supermarkets Arena on Monday night and look ahead to the next challenge as Texas Southern is coming to town this week for game number 2. All up ahead with Chris Level on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Glad to be back in the saddle with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online's got you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. So get there today with Bet Online, where the game starts. The season started from United Supermarkets Arena in a successful way for Mark Adams and the Red Raiders as they take care of business against Northwestern State, 73-49. The final score. Will be joined coming up momentarily by Chris Level, who was on the call as Tech gets off to a 1-0 start, and year number 2 for Mark Adams as the Red Raider head coach. We'll get Chris's perspective on what he saw there courtside, but certainly plain for anyone to see that there was a little bit more offensive firepower, seemed like, in the tank for Texas Tech, or maybe at least a little bit more consistent shooting. You saw some things from beyond the arc. You saw some things from the field as far as a dose of a mid-range game that I think backed up a little bit about what we heard this offseason, that Texas Tech would be doing some things a little bit differently offensively and maybe a little bit more capable whenever it comes to knocking down some shots from the field. He did shoot 52% from the field as a team for the night, around 39% from beyond the three-point arc, as you had Jalen Tyson knock down your first bucket of the season from beyond the arc. He goes 2 for 3. Pop Isaacs as well, 2 for 3 from three-point land. And the story of the night goes without saying that the one that we talked about the most this offseason, potentially being the Red Raiders' most improved player as far as the offseason goes, when the lights aren't on and the doors are closed, well, that being Daniel Batcho, and a double-double in game number 1 for Mr. Batcho is not going to lessen any of that hype. Had 10 boards, 12 points, looked aggressive, and certainly as far as what you saw in the first go-around for Batcho a year ago was a fearless approach. So whenever you've got some physical talent, things like that, but you're young, and certainly when you're trying to acclimate yourself as a young guy to the Big 12 Conference, you're wondering if there's going to be any timidity or hesitation, anything like that. And we didn't see a whole lot of that from Batcho last year, which was good to see from a newcomer, but wondering whether or not he's going to be able to elevate his game to the next level here this season has been one of the bigger questions of the offseason, especially with Fardaz Amack sideline. Big Maple still biding his time until the return. When it'll be, only time will tell. Mark Adams says he'd like to think that he will be there by at least conference play. But Batcho looked awesome. Thought he showed actually a little finesse, a little fluidity near the rim, and continued to see that aggression that we became accustomed to seeing a season ago. No doubt about that. One thing we'll clearly ask Chris about is something that also I would think stood out to anyone, whether watching through a television set or watching their courtside. Like Chris, 20 turnovers on the day. That's not what you're looking for. I think you split it up about 10 and 10 first and second half. That's not going to be a survivable number if you're wanting to compete for anything interesting in the Big 12 Conference, or obviously back up a Sweet 16 run with anything similar to that or beyond as it pertains to the NCAA tournament. But again, we're talking about the first 40 minutes of basketball for Texas Tech, so we'll allow some time for that number hopefully to be whittled down. Obviously, Tech starting the season as a work in progress like everyone really is, but definitely a more challenging, I would think, aspect to it as compared to some when you're talking about such a new roster and so many new pieces you're trying to combine together for the first time, and not many of them spending much time on campus. I think we will see much louder nights, clearly, from guys like Kevin O'Banner as Batcho was your only double-digit scorer on the night. You did get a nice dose of Kerwin Walton off of the bench as he contributed 9 points. And Elijah Fisher, the freshman, who should be a high school senior right now. Got to tell you, I'm reserving, anything as far as a high expectation this season. I'm definitely in modest land as far as what I think he could contribute. But I was a little bit surprised, maybe even possibly stunned by how he looked to fit from a physical standpoint. He didn't really stand out as a guy that you would pick as someone who could have been a high school senior. I thought physically he was looking the part. Of course, we're also not talking about a Big 12 opponent that is there on the other bench. So as far as what the look is like, that obviously will change a lot as you get into Big 12 play, and will change very quickly just around the corner as you get to the Maui Invitational. We will get to game one and win one of the season for Mark Adams and the Red Raiders, and we'll get to what's coming up on Thursday night from United Supermarkets Arena as they will host Texas Southern with Chris Level coming up on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, our partners at Nissan working with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network called Thrilling Moments, where we're highlighting the most exciting moments from your Red Raiders. And this week's Thrilling Moment brought to you by Mark Adams and the gang. It's 40 minutes worth of thrilling moments as you open up year number 2 under Coach Adams in West Texas. Monday night from United Supermarkets Arena as Tech downs Northwestern State. From the fire cannons at the intro to a Batcho double-double. That's the definition of thrilling. Those thrills inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. So pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. And also Jay's Salsa Company, ready at jsalsacompany.com to ship out that Red Raider family recipe, 20 years in the making, anywhere in the U.S. If you're in Texas or New Mexico, stock there on your grocery store shelves in over 90 stores across those two states. Most United Supermarkets, Albertsons Supermarkets, Market Streets, or in the LBK at HEB. Or as I mentioned, get online right now at jsalsacompany.com as they're shipping anywhere in the U.S. It is the Tech fans' tailgate staple throughout football season, and you might as well keep the party rolling with Jay's Salsa as we roll into hoops season. The hot or the mild, you'll find it to your liking, whatever your preference is. They're on that grocery store shelf, popping in that red and black jar. So be on the lookout for it today in over 90 stores in Texas or New Mexico, or online shipping anywhere in the U.S. right now at jsalsacompany.com. Great to have you with us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And we don't just mean teams, Chris, or team singular. We mean teams plural this time of year, because Red Raider Hoops now in the books, 1-0. And we saw some things come to fruition, I thought, on night one as Tech takes down Northwestern State that we talked about in the offseason. And just for starters, did seem like there were a few shooters maybe on the roster.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some of these nights where maybe all these don't go in, but boy, you saw it coming, raining down from everywhere in the opener, and really from a variety of places. You saw it from some of the freshmen, from the old guy and Kevin O'Banner, and that was something we talked about in the telecast, is that they desperately needed to get that aspect of their team fixed. You shot 32% as a team last year, making about 6 a game. In this opener, you just 7 of 18, but it was very efficient. And I thought you put Northwestern State on the ropes early with a barrage of made threes. And Pop Isaacs had a couple. Lamar Washington hit one. O'Banner hit one. So yeah, that part was fun to watch, because teams can't play zone defense against you really anymore. You just shoot them right out of it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and that'll be a little bit of a change as far as what we've seen recently on the offensive end of the floor. If that can be sustained, they're not all going to look like tonight, as you mentioned. But it was nice to see as far as an opening salvo. And as I've already mentioned here, Chris, before you joined us on the phone, Batcho fever will not lessen after an opening double-double, man. I know, again, it ain't going to be like that for him either every night this season, but what a start. I think I heard you and John talking about on the broadcast that he had scored a season high of 8 twice last year, and at whatever point that was he crossed that was nowhere near the end. So, man, what a start.
And you say it may not be easy for him the rest of the way as easy it was tonight. Yeah, it's 12-10. I'm wondering if it might be. I'm wondering if he's
kind of range of expectation for him. I mean, is that realistic? 12-10 kind of guy?
I think a double is absolutely what he's capable of. He plays so hard. I think he's going to get the minutes to be able to average, some numbers, I guess, that go along with some of those stats and things like that. I mean, and he's really a complete player, Casey, because I mean the one thing that everybody won't talk about, I mean, he was tied for the team lead in assists. And I think that's one thing that I think is fun because he's really just a complete player. And tonight I thought he does a good job because he doesn't foul one time. He doesn't commit a personal foul. And I think that's one of the concerns that they had about him. Can he play this hard? Can he be this aggressive and play without fouling? Because if he puts himself in foul trouble, he doesn't get to play these minutes that his team needs him to play. And, I just thought for an opener, I mean, boy, he did a lot of good things. And he got tired because you're leaning on him quite a bit. He played, 24 minutes, but just fun to watch him kind of play on both ends of the floor, run the floor, facilitate, shoot it, rebound. I mean, did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, man, he had some touch around the rim on some nice aggressive moves to the basket. And I think he had probably one of the best dishes or feeds of the night, the give and go with Williams there. That was nice.
Yes, it was. I mean, I just think he's taken such a big step from year one to year two mentally, and he's in much better shape. He's dropped some weight, and he's just in shape, but he just grasped the game more. It's kind of slowed down for him, and just, he sees the floor, and, I think you have a big problem with turnovers tonight, but he only has one. And I just thought it was impressive, just his floor game, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt. And your mention about the fouls too should not go unnoticed, because that you would expect or think, and maybe we're wrong to do it, I don't know, but you would think will be a big part of what the challenge will be for him in Big 12 play as he's battling in there and hopefully using some of that physicality. He can, but able to stay on the floor. And man, Chris, I just look at Batcho's physique and what he represents on the floor as far as how he uses his body. And to me, it's just like all sharp edges. I mean, that dude would not be fun to tangle with, in the paint for 40 minutes. And you know what I'm saying? Like there's not much soft about him. I know he's not like a big beefy frame. He's kind of lean, but I don't know. There's just something really forceful about the way he attacks things. And I mentioned it already on this episode today, was not fearful or timid in any way, shape, or form last year. And when a lot of guys can be in that setting. And so I thought that was great to see. And now maybe with some ascension from a skill standpoint, you're pairing that with the aggression. And you may be right. Maybe I'm placing the ceiling a little bit too short if I'm thinking the double-double is not going to be something we're talking about a lot. And that'd be great news for Texas Tech, actually, if that was going to be the case. It would also be great news, Chris, if you didn't turn the ball over 20 times every game this year, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's really there's a couple of things that Coach Adams was frustrated with, and that's easily, top of the list, is just getting sloppy and not taking care of it. I mean, you have 20 turnovers and you're, one of your stud freshmen in Pop Isaacs. I mean, he's responsible for 25% of those. I mean, he turns it over 5 times himself. And I just think they're going to have to learn to be a little bit more careful with the ball. But this is going to be part of the patience that everybody, including Mark Adams, is going to have to exercise with this group, because they're guard oriented. They spread the floor. They want to play a bit faster, and and all those things, but they just got to, there's an old saying, you got to know when to go and know when to slow. And sometimes guys get sped up a bit, and you play out of control, and you see something that's you think is there and then it's not. I mean, because it's only going to get tougher. And I think that's he was hoping for 11 or 12 turnovers, and he would have been happy with that. And you end up with 20. End up having 20. So that's something. The other thing that I don't think they felt real good about was just how many offensive rebounds they gave up to Northwestern State, because you give up offensive rebounds, and Northwestern State just came in and they just started launching it from everywhere. I mean, shoot 36 threes. They're just shooting it from everywhere. Everybody's in range as soon as they touch it. I didn't. It's kind of a hope strategy, because you're just hoping that you come and get really hot, but you got a lot of guys shooting it from really deep, and it equals long rebounds, but that's a lot of second chance opportunities. So I know those were the two things that Mark Adams would probably love to coach up and be better at from the opener.
Before I get to your thoughts, and we'll wrap up the basketball portion of our conversation here today, we're going to get to Red Raider football coming up, and some comments from Tech head coach Joey McGuire pertaining to some split reps at the quarterback spot this week. But before we get there, Chris, and before I want to ask you about Texas Southern coming up later this week at United Supermarkets Arena, but I'm curious. I want to tell you what I thought I was seeing here tonight in a one-game sample size over the course of 40 minutes. Not much, but something. As it relates to that turnover number, I saw Davion Harmon with only 2 of those 20, and his assist-to-turnover ratio was 4-2. A guy that's seen as much basketball as him, maybe you're expecting something like that. Isaacs, you mentioned, and what I thought was really interesting between those two, I saw like dual simultaneous attempts at gathering a huddle, like at the free throw line. Like, who's going to be the guy to wave everybody in, guys? So I just kind of, you know what I'm saying? I like seeing Isaacs like assert himself in that situation. And I appreciate what it means about his attitude and his confidence. It did kind of stand out to me as somewhat humorous, and something that maybe is just a sign of this roster trying to meld together. But, Harmon, who I expect more so to be the guy who's kind of got the floor as far as the general. I hope it goes that way at least. He was a 4-2 guy in the assist to turnover ratio here tonight. So, I think I'd have been a little bit more it'd been more eye-popping for me if we saw like a really, really big night, I guess, in that column from somebody like Harmon. Does that make sense at all? Did you notice any of those similar things?
Well, I think to your point, I mean, Pop, he carries himself like an older guy. He doesn't ever seemingly get too rattled or anything like that, and so he'll clean some of that up. But I mean, if he shoots it like that, he'll probably get away with being able to turn it over a little bit more. I mean, knock down a couple of threes, and one time he knocked down another one, but he stepped out of bounds, and they said he was out of bounds, obviously, or he would have had a third made three. But yeah, I mean, I like having two kind of point guard types, especially one that's experienced and one that's a younger player that's going to be really, really good, because they just kind of those are your quarterback types, and usually as they go, that's how you go. And yeah, I'm not worried about it. It's worth pointing out, because I guarantee you, whenever Coach Adams and those guys look at that stat sheet, Pop Isaacs is going to hear about it when they see 5 turnovers. That's just part of it, but he'll get better and grow from it, and it's going to be a learning experience.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Liked what we saw from him, but thought that was somewhat interesting, as Texas Tech is looking for a floor general as far as a guy to fit that PG spot, or somebody there more so on the perimeter. And not that it's a totally open casting call, but I'm glad to see maybe those guys competing for some of that those leadership roles, I guess, in a certain way. You just hope that it's a healthy kind of competition. Speaking of competition, before we get to the gridiron, Chris, Texas Southern coming up before we wrap up the week here in Lubbock to open up the home schedule with 2 here. What do you know about Texas Southern, and how do you feel about the primer tonight to get ready for game 2? Anything similar?
Well, I think they're going to be these next 2 games are going to be really tough. I mean, and I don't know if you've looked at like some of the scores from the opening day, but I mean, Oklahoma loses to Sam Houston State. I think TCU beats Arkansas Pine Bluff by 1 point, and they brought everybody back.
Yes, I did notice, Chris. I did notice.
Okay, gotcha. So, Texas Southern was a team last year, Casey, that I may be slightly off here, but they are one of these teams that they go on these almost like a 6-week road trip to start the season because this is how they fund their athletic department. So they started off their season last year like 0-9 or something, and I think they ended up winning like 15 of their next 17 or 17 of the last 19 or something. They were one of the hottest teams in the country, and so I think most of that team is back. They were playing, and on opening day they were playing at San Francisco. As I'm talking to you now, I think last time I saw it, they were down about 15 or 20. So they're going to be coming from San Francisco. My point is, though, it's definitely a step up in competition. And I think, Louisiana Tech, the following game on the following Monday night, they're going to be better too. They bring a lot of their guys back. So some of these are deceiving non-conference games, but as we've just talked about, you better be careful because with the portal, it's harder and harder to win some of these games and blow teams out. The Red Raiders fortunate enough to do that, but yeah, Texas Southern, they have a lot of momentum in the offseason.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and can't wait to get back out on the floor and continue to see how this team will come together and come into form. And, of course, you got huge non-conference challenges, so you're going to be learning a whole lot about yourself very quickly as you begin this season. We will leave basketball there for now. Of course, be sure you're subscribed on YouTube to Locked On Texas Tech for any bonus episodes maybe coming at you as the schedule really ramps up this week, getting into the basketball frame of mind, but of course, still thinking Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders and their pursuit of bowl eligibility. Kansas is coming to town, and we are back. Chris, I told you to get these QB notes back out yesterday, and I wasn't kidding because we're back to talking split reps and talking about apparently a decision here this week that the coaches have to make as far as who's going to take that snap. You mentioned over the weekend not anticipating that Baron Morton was going to be back on the field, was ruled out by his head coach to kick off the week. So now we truly turn to the other two again, and we're taking a closer look at that. Coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, it's Bet Online headquarters for live betting stats and scores each game day as we're getting into college basketball season. Whole lot more game day opportunities within the week, and Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite events while keeping up with the Red Raiders. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about what the trends are looking like this week. Going to be some interesting numbers as Texas Tech rolls through this non-conference schedule. So make sure that you are up to speed with all the action, all the angles, and all the angles on the action with our friends at Bet Online, where the game starts. For making Locked On Texas Tech a part of your day, whenever, wherever, however. Glad to have you out there. Subscribe on YouTube if you have not so far, so you miss nothing as we are juggling Red Raider basketball, Red Raider football, and all points in between, wrapping up the fall and getting into winter, right? It's just around the corner. Hope you're tacking on masks like I am, preparing for the upcoming winter here in West Texas. Chris, as we leave the basketball conversation behind and wrap up today's episode talking Red Raider football, we heard from Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire to kick off the week as he was pointing to split reps between two quarterbacks now in Tyler Shuck and Donovan Smith. And I got to tell you, sometimes I feel like there's been just some intentional mystery added to this conversation by the coaching staff for whatever reason, and I don't really care. I'm more entertained by it than anything else. But I've left this weekend really, personally empathizing with Coach McGuire and Coach Kitley because honestly don't quite know which way I think I would want to go. Probably leaning a little bit more so towards number 12 because if he can survive and stay on the field, I might want to believe the turnovers could lessen. And, of course, that's just a fatal wound for any team if your quarterback's giving it away like the other guy, that being Donovan Smith, has been prone to do this season. But I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, man, I'm really not sure which way I'd want to be going here. How are you processing that this week? And could you give us an idea, really what is the breakdown? Are we talking about a coin flip as you began the week? Somebody with more of an edge? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, first off, it's frustrating that we continue to have this conversation because of another injury or a re-aggravation, whatever however we want to phrase it. Because I think that we've clearly seen that at this point, Barron does give you the best chance to win. I think that you lost that chance, I think, when he exited the game versus TCU, and so you're left with Tyler Shuck and Donovan Smith. And again, you can win with these two. I'm just going off of kind of recency bias and what we've seen recently on these guys. And I think Tyler probably starts, Casey. I think they're both going to get reps and all these things, and I don't know how it necessarily will be divvied up. But unless one player is just clearly better than the other, my guess is you're going to see both. You'll see Tyler. You'll see Tyler start, and then you'll see Donovan Smith kind of in some of the short yardage stuff. And I think if you go back and watch, the game, like the one play where Donovan, he runs, it was one of the fourth downs, and he kind of runs into a really heavy box, and he's got Taj Brooks right over there to his right, I believe. And if he just looks up and throws it over there, I mean, we're going to find out how fast Taj Brooks is. And that's just kind of the problem with Donovan, is he just doesn't. He's not seeing it all very quickly, and I think that he has had some problems with turnovers in practice, and we've seen him when he's played too. He has some of those same issues. But again, with Tyler, it doesn't look perfect there either, because I think we see kind of not sure the arm strength is there, not sure that he's just quite as sharp as when we last saw him in early September. But bottom line is you're going to have to get something out of both of them or one of them, and enough to beat a pretty good Kansas team right now, the one that's going to go to a bowl game. But it's just it's just maddening to me that we still keep having to talk about this, but this is just the reality of it. And so I'm not certain, Casey, that Barron is going to be. I don't know if we're talking Iowa State or even Oklahoma for him. Actually, I mean, he needs some time, and I just don't know if there's enough time there to get him feeling to where, he's good enough and he can help you. Because if anything, even if you don't run him, he's got to be able to move around back there and feel comfortable doing that. That's just the way that the position these days is played. You've got to be able to extend the play. But I think you're kind of dealing with Tyler/Donovan here for the short term, at least for sure.
Yeah, and the position particularly played that way behind Tech's offensive line this year. You better be able to move, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. I really think, I mean, maybe the choice was obvious or is obvious given who was taking what number of snaps after Morton leaves the game last week. But I just still have some curiosity, Chris, about hesitation or being timid or things like that from Tyler Shuck, and not for any reason other than what he's just come through for the last 2 years. I think we understand his ability mentally to process things and, maybe what he can do with his arm otherwise. But have you seen any hesitation that you think could be related to just trying to acclimate himself back to getting hit, the speed of the game? Is there any T-Rex arms, so to speak, that you see kind of come up out there?
No, I just think it's just general like rust and like not it's muscle memory and all the things that come with not playing for as long as he did. I mean, I just I feel like I'm Allen Iverson in this deal too. We're talking about practice and all that stuff, but like if you aren't in tune and just doing those same things, it just takes a bit. The sport is hard, and sports are hard, especially at this level. And so I just think that he's just kind of rusty. He's just not all back yet. And I think that he can absolutely get back there, but it's just like it needs to happen, quick. And he doesn't have a whole month of July and August to kind of ramp up and all those things. No, everybody around here needs it right now, because Tyler's a great kid, man. If you've ever been around him at all, he's sharp. He's a guy that, he acts how you want a quarterback to act. I mean, he's got the respect of his teammates, and so, but, and again, we've touched on this. since that TCU game. You and I have, Casey, but he knew that his body's not quite there yet. And he didn't specifically say arm strength or anything. He just said, my mind is engaged. I feel like I'm in tune, but physically, yeah, my body's trying to catch up, and I'm a bit rusty there. But I don't know what you do about that other than just keep repping him, he's just got to stay sharp and just keep kind of working through it. Honestly, that's the only, because there's just some like a lack of zip on some of those throws. I mean, and not to point to that throw he made versus Baylor, but that was painful to see. And that's not the quarterback that we saw really in the entire offseason and last spring. And that's just not him. And it's unfair that we're judging him based on that because he's missed some time. But hopefully he starts to look a little bit sharper and sharper, because it still didn't see a ton of zip on his throws versus TCU, but it's certainly going to be needed against Kansas and going forward if he's asked to carry the load here, and he certainly might be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We got to start this episode, Chris, on a high note with a Red Raider Hoops win, so I'm going to do my best to finish it on a high note. It sounds like, I think, possibly Monroe Mills back up front this time around. That could be some good news for whoever's back there taking the snaps, if that's the case.
Yeah, and I'll even add more to it. I think you're going to get your starting right side back. I think Monroe Mills and Landon Peterson are both back. I can't say for 100% certainty that Landon Peterson will start at right guard over Jacoby Jackson. And that's one of the things that was talked about is like some of these players we're sitting there talking about, like, Barron, Jerron Bradley, Jacoby Jackson. I mean, there's a long list of like freshmen that are playing right now, and you hope there's a payoff. But Monroe Mills is one of those younger guys too that we forget that he's a young guy and he's got a whole bunch of years left to play. But Casey, let's not forget that. I mean, maybe this week, maybe he's over at left tackle, maybe Caleb Rogers is over at right tackle. I mean, I would say it's all possible. But to answer your question, you're getting help back. You're going to have more pieces. You do lose Ty Buchanan. So he was your starter at right tackle and this past game, and he was lost to an injury. I don't know how bad that is, but I don't think he's going to play this week. But you do get Monroe Mills and Landon Peterson back, and so the net there is certainly a positive.
Yeah, when you said that we're going to get our right side back, I thought, yeah, and only God knows which side they're going to be lined up on.
It's true. Yes.
So stay tuned to Locked On Texas Tech as we'll keep an eye on this developing situation, getting closer and closer to the Red Raiders back in the LBK, the friendly confines of Jones Stadium, as they host the Kansas Jayhawks. Appreciate you out there for hanging with us on Locked On Texas Tech today. And as I mentioned, subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss any episodes. We'll have plenty of bonus episodes coming at you fast and furious as we get down the home stretch of football season and get cranked up through this basketball non-conference schedule. Chris, enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the insights and thanks for the time.
Well, and I certainly appreciate everybody being patient with us with a kind of a crazy couple of weeks. We're all over the place, and we're going to try to keep bringing you content and all these things. But yeah, a lot going on. But we will, Coach Cowan and I will do our best, man.
That's right. We just hope it doesn't boil down to Chris really having to dive into TikTok content, but that is the last resort. If we have to go there, that is the last resort. As for now, YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts is where you need to be to check out Locked On at Texas Tech. Thanks for making it your first listen. And for your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. That's Locked On Sports Today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or everywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. We'll catch you on the other side back here on Locked On Texas Tech.